Okay. So I've got 3 for lateness. No, he's arrived. The late Councillor Lee has arrived. Okay, do I have a mover and seconder for the apologies, please? Thank you. Fletcher and Leone. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried. Okay. Attendance by electronic link. We have a request from Councillor Dalton, who sadly has a knee operation. Are you there, Councillor Dalton?
Yes, I am, Your Worship.
I hope you get better. All right, move in a seconder for allowing electronic attendance. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Leone, all those in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you. Any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest. Minutes of confirmation of the 24th of November 22nd. Is anyone prepared to move and second those? Deputy Mayor and Councillor Fletcher, all those in favour, please say aye. Carried. Okay, it's a big agenda today, and it's my intention to run a structured meeting for all items. Now, after the item has been presented, I'll take questions for each item, and I'd ask you to be concise when you ask them and not lead into what is effectively a speech. Once questions have been completed, I'll ask staff to move away from the table, but then we'll move into debate. And as per standing orders, you'll have 5 minutes to speak. I'll ask Sandra to ring a bell at 4 minutes so you know when it's time to wrap it up. And if we all follow this process, the meeting should run in a reasonably smooth manner. It's Councillor Sayers, where is he? Okay, public input. We have 4 received and they declined requests. Rebecca McIntosh, Sarah Dennison from Curry Kids. That's been under Standing Order 7.6. I've declined that because that has been included into the section for consultation. So you have plenty of opportunity. Christopher Dempsey, for the same reason. There's a separate consultation process for the value for money. The Maritime Union sent one in, which is out of time, but I have agreed to meet the Maritime Union as part of the consultation. I've referred the request of Christopher Dempsey about the Inner West suite of projects to the Transport and Infrastructure Committee, which hold the responsibility for this. And at its 1st of December meeting, the Transport and Infrastructure Committee requested an update from Auckland Transport on the projects which Mr Dempsey wishes to speak to. So he will be invited to speak to the next Transport and Infrastructure Committee meeting. Right. We have also local board input. We received 6 requests and we declined Albert Eden, Puketapu, Tapapa, Araki, Waitemata and Upper Harbour and Kaipatiki because all those things have been, local boards have been included in the governing body workshops and had an opportunity to provide feedback. Plus, these are all things that go into the long term, into the consultation process. Extraordinary items, none known. On that basis, we'll move on to the annual budget decision making, and I invite Tamsin Matchett, the Program Director, to address us on the concept. Tamsin, and Ross Tucker, the General Manager of Financial Strategy and Planning. Good morning and welcome.
Ngā mihi ki a koe, Mr Mayor. And tēnā koutou ngā kawana o te kaunihera o Tamaki Makaurau. It's a pleasure to be here with you today and to kick things off this morning. So the overview to decision-making report in front of you details the annual budget process up until today, including a high-level summary of the advice provided to date and the economic and financial challenges that relate to the annual budget 2023-2024. It provides the context for the rest of the agenda today relating to budget decisions, which includes local board feedback on regional items for consultation, the mayoral proposal, and other fees and rates proposals. The overview report includes the legislative requirements associated with the budget, including specific requirements on the inclusion of content relating to local board agreements and a summary of the Tupuna Maunga Authority's draft operational plan in any consultation material. The report also highlights the process requirements related to any decision made today that necessitates an amendment to our LTP and the associated audit we would be required to undertake. Decisions relating to the budget on today's agenda will enable staff to produce consultation material, which is the next step in the overall budget process. The recommendations in my report note its contents as they relate to the wider context of today's agenda and the other reports that will follow, and the specific requirements relating to the next step in the process to give effect to today's decisions to confirm the regional items for consultation. I would also like to note that on Monday, the 12th of December, the Audit and Risk Committee met and received a report on the budget process and management of key financial risks. At that meeting, the committee agreed to advise the governing body that an appropriate approach is being taken to manage the key financial risks associated with the annual budget 23-24, provided that the governing body agrees a budget proposal and items for consultation that address the financial pressures in a sustainable, credible, and financially prudent manner. Finally, this report details the next steps in the process, which includes bringing a communications and engagement approach and draft consultation material to a governing body workshop in early 2023, ahead of consultation in March. That concludes the summary for my report. Ngā mihi kia koutou. Happy to take any part time, Mr. Mayor.
Must have been very clear because there are no questions. Oh, there is one. Councillor Darby.
Thanks, Mayor. And just when we workshopped the question of how we engage with Aucklanders, I raised the possibility of going the next step in a deeper form of engagement. And Mayor, you and I have spoken of this about a more deliberative process, participatory citizens' assemblies and that sort of thing. So I know we're constrained by time, but can I have some feedback now, because I think it feeds into the question of the B here, of what the staff are preparing that moves us more in that participatory engagement to lead to more collective decision making.
Through the Chair, thank you for your question, Councillor Darby. So staff are currently working on the draft comms and engagement approach that will come to you in February. That includes any consideration of participatory or deliberative events or processes, but we will take your feedback on board and look to include something of that nature within the comms and engagement approach that will be workshopped with you in February.
Okay, thanks, and thanks, Chair. Mayor, I'll take that as confirmation that we'll be looking at that.
Okay, Councillor Walker.
A quick question. The suggestion's been put that in this particular annual budget that we open ourselves up to suggestions from the community, particularly around making savings and the like. So my question is around what facility we can put in place to enable that. There may be suggestions that contractors have got, subcontractors, members of the community, people with expertise in various areas. And the suggestions, it has been further put that there be some facility that enables some anonymity because people may not want to reveal themselves. So just a question around that.
Through the Chair, thank you for the question, Councillor Walker. So in terms of, we obviously have the consultation process, which enables feedback from all Aucklanders on any component of the budget, but we also have several communications channels available to Aucklanders. That's via our telephone or call centre, There are also written communications where people can remain anonymous if they wish to, and they can provide any suggestion related to the budget or otherwise through those channels.
Councillor Henderson and then Councillor Cleary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in line with the process for how we've come to today, can we confirm that all questions from councillors, both in the workshop and through emails, have been answered?
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor Henderson. I can confirm that we have responded to all questions up until Friday last week. We were still receiving questions this week that may need further time in order for staff to respond. But yes, the majority of questions that we have received through workshop and via email are now on Nexus and available to all elected members. I believe that they're attached to workshop material up on Nexus.
Councillor Ferry.
Thank you. I just wanted to note the public feedback period is now going to be March. And historically it's usually been mid-Feb to mid-March, and so I just wanted to understand that a bit better, and in particular quite often when the draft consultation material has come back, particularly in my past life as a local board chair, we've been told it's too late to change in detail of questions, so I'm a little worried about that. And I note that several of the resolutions in the Mayor's final proposal do speak about options going out to our community on some aspects of this. So getting those questions right in the consultation is going to be really important. What work's going to be undertaken to make sure that we're involved in how those questions are formed up prior to the actual final vote on that consultation material? Thanks.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Ferry. So in terms of the dates, the reason why we haven't yet confirmed the exact dates of the consultation is due to decision making today. We need to better understand the scope of the consultation because if we are required to undertake an audit relating to the amendment of an LTP, then we need to factor that in. So at the moment, we are looking at dates that would indicate from the end of February to the end of March, so very similar to previous years. We've just stuck to March just in order to give us a little bit of flexibility in terms of that audit process if required. In terms of developing the draft consultation material, the plan is that we would come to you at the beginning of February with draft material to give us enough time to work through feedback that we receive at that workshop and afterwards to ensure that we're taking all of the views of the committee on board before we come to you and ask you to adopt that material. That will include the questions and the feedback form.
Okay, do I have someone to move? Oops. Sorry, Councillor Philippina, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and my humble apologies. I just wanted to confirm terms, and I just want to confirm that in February, March, according to your table on number under 57, is that when we will be advised as to the approach around the consultation, e.g. Pacifica, Māori, have your say events, how that form is going to take place, and is that the time that that will happen?
Through the chair, thank you for the question, Councillor Philippina. Yes, that's when that will happen, early February, when we bring the draft consultation material. We will also bring you the draft comms and engagement approach, which includes the details around how we engage with the diverse communities of Tamaki Makaurau. So yes, it includes those individual events that we might hold with those communities, as well as generally with the wider population of Auckland.
Papa, and you wish a supplementary. As a result of that, between now and February, March, there is no issue at all with any of elected members, that includes the local boards, of giving you suggestions that may be beneficial around how you consult with their respective communities. So I'm assuming that will play a part in that as well.
Through the chair, we welcome any feedback and any suggestions that we can consider as part of our engagement approach with Tamaki Makaurau.
Kia ora. Ngā mihi ki a koe, Your Worship.
Thank you, it's very helpful. Okay, do I have a mover that to note the contents of the report, and note that the annual budget consultation will include local board matters and a summary of the Tupuna Monga Authority operational plan to be agreed with the authority early next year. Fletcher and Deputy Mayor. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? No, carried. Thank you very much for that. Right, item 8 is the local board feedback on items for consultation. I met with all local board chairs on Monday. It was a productive discussion. We cleared up some of the confusion about where local boards could find their 5% savings. We are not asking them to cut their locally driven initiatives budget, but could come from changing some of their asset-based services. They can also find more revenue from community leases or any other combination of ideas. And it's up to the local boards to work with staff to find savings in ABS. I do not accept that it's impossible, so I challenge the local boards to work hard to find these savings. I've also challenged the boards to talk to their communities about the alternatives if savings are not found, because we have to balance the budget legally. I'll be meeting with local board chairs again early in the new year and then consider all the consultation feedback with the governing body after that. But I do wish to thank them for supporting taking the budget to consultation. And I will take anything that you wish to add to that, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and Morena, councillors and members. Just briefly, this report summarises the resolutions made by the 21 local boards at their business meetings last week on the 6th to 8th of December. Note that this is an important part of our shared governance model where local boards can actually give input on these regional topics. And they will also decide their local consultation content in early February 2023. Note that the local boards had an extremely short time frame to consider their input into the regional topics in the mayoral proposal. And as the Mayor has noted, there was a very useful discussion at the Chairs Forum this week, and the Chairs Forum have written to the Mayor summarising the common views on the proposal. That's helpful given that there's a very wide range of views through the resolution, so that actually helps to bring together some of those common themes across the 21 boards. Just a note too that the Chairs Forum isn't a decision-making body and doesn't replace the resolutions of the individual local boards, but it is a useful summary of those common themes. In terms of the actual content, local boards recognise and support that they have an important contribution to make to the overall financial solution. We'll just mention a few of the points from the resolutions. In relation to the proposed 5% reduction to local board funding, and as the Mayor has noted, that covers both the asset-based funding as well as other components such as the LDI and other aspects. The discussion focused on the feasibility and impact of potential cuts, particularly the balance between those various types of funding. 4 boards supported the proposal in principle. 11 boards did not and noted the impact on community and environmental outcomes currently delivered through that budget. And there was discussion of the equity issues and impact on the boards that primarily deliver community and environmental services through particularly the LDI mechanism. We had 9 local boards supporting consultation on the proposal to leverage central government investment. And there were also a range of resolutions on other issues. I have Renee Burgess with me as well too, so Mr Mayor would be happy to answer any questions of detail on the report, and the full resolutions are appended as well too. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to thank them for their letter, which did indicate there was a range of issues on a lot of things, but they did overall support taking the budget to consultation. So I have a question from Councillor Newman.
Thank you. Good morning, Louise, colleagues. Can I ask, how quickly would you be able to get further updated information on the ability to achieve savings through changes to LDI by 30 June deadline, because I support what the Mayor has set out in terms of there are a mix of levers available, but I have been confused as to whether the officers are advising local boards in relation to the availability of ABS as a tool for achieving the savings targets. So what information how soon can you get updated information as to the feasibility of using ABS?
Thank you. We're working with our colleagues in community services, and they have advised that information on options and potential impact they are working on, and we hope to have that early next year. Obviously, the very short time frame between the presentation of the proposal and the local board's discussion and our colleagues are working on that.
Do you anticipate that information would be available for the local boards when they undertake their have your say in hearings on this matter, or is that going to come after that?
Councillor Newman, and through the chair, if I could perhaps just check with Claudia Weiss, just to answer that in detail. Thank you, Claudia. Claudia will be able to give a more detailed response.
Kia ora koutou katoa. Thank you very much. Kia ora, Mr Mayor. If I may ask, can I ask you to please repeat the question, Councillor Newman?
I'm wanting to know if the updated information on the options for ABS related savings will be available to the governing body and in particular to the boards prior to the commencement of the have your says and the board hearings that will be convened, because that information will be germane to the discussion that the boards have with their communities around ways and options for achieving that target.
Thank you very much for the question. So our teams are working at pace to try to pull together key scenarios so that we can give that information. There is quite a amount of complexity in unpicking the various ABS funding models, and what we need to do is be very careful that we don't ultimately double count the potential savings that we assess. So ABS typically covers a range of our service-based costs, so what it costs us to run a service in the community, and some of those potential savings might be calculated as part of CNCS operating cost savings, as in customer and community services, and others may be more under the decision-making, or certainly under the decision-making of local boards. We need to unpick that, and what we're hoping to do is have that information ready so that local boards and the community can give us good feedback on the consultation materials.
Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Newman's asked a lot of my questions, but I can see we've got the dollar figure per local board on the savings they're asked to make. Now, I only received that figure yesterday. Were local boards given that figure when they were consulted?
Through the chair, the local boards were given
That
opening it up so that we can start looking into it. Just because they haven't done it in the past doesn't mean to say they can't do it now. Okay, so I have Councillor Sayers, Member Taipari, Councillor Leone and Councillor Hills. Councillor Sayers, please.
Yeah, through you, Chair, thank you very much. It's just probably picking up on some of the earlier questions as well, just prompted a thought around this governance framework review work that's been undertaken and to try and get some rebalancing between the AGS and other formulas as well, the formulas. So as an organisation, have we got a timeline on when that work's likely to be completed? I'm trying to establish when there might be some finalisation around making those changes through that work programme.
Thank you for the question. And the governance framework review, particularly the increased local decision-making part of that, does give more flexibility to the boards. That work in terms of implementation for the resolutions that were decided on in the last term is underway for implementation next year. In terms of the detailed timeline for further work on that, there are other aspects such as looking at the equity of funding across the boards, etc., that needs further work on that.
So just for clarification, so you mentioned that sometime next year, and then there could be more work again. So Louise, is the expectation that it'll be done by the close of calendar year next year, or is likely to
I'm going to call upon Claudia Weiss again to give more detail.
Yeah,
thank you, Councillor Sayers.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr Chair, and thank you for the question, Councillor Sayers. So the first part that was approved last year, just for clarification, allows the local boards to make decisions around local community services and assets. That is immediately implementable now, and we are working with local boards where those decisions come into effect. So that is already allowing the local boards to have greater decision-making authority. The next two steps that are required under that governance framework review and that we set out to work towards putting forward in the LTP, the long-term plan, is the equity of funding and the sub-regional asset and service decisions. Those decisions are fairly complex, and therefore we're proposing that it would be something that we create the analyses and the recommendations for as part of the LTP.
Thank you.
Member Taipari.
Kia ora, Your Worship. Ka nui te mihi ki a koutou e tēnei wā. You may not be able to answer this now, offline maybe, but do you know what the engagement was with Māori by the respective local boards and how that feedback was provided to you?
In terms of, thank you for the question. I did note that there was a very short time frame for boards to prepare their feedback, a number of days from the mayoral proposal. So at this stage, I think we had two boards, a couple of boards, Renee, that specifically referenced implications for Māori and their feedback. But in terms of consultation and engagement, that will occur over the February time frames. So for this report itself, there wasn't this specific engagement, as far as I understand. Yep.
Councillor Leone, please.
Kia ora, ngā mihi nui. I just want to first of all acknowledge some of the local board chairs and local board members that are here in the room today. And I also just want to express that I have brought up previously that I have been concerned about the cuts here. Can I just get an idea of when we do look at the analysis of how different boards are going to be impacted by this, how's that going to be fed back to us?
After the consultation period, the local boards will get an opportunity to feedback once again to the governing body, and they will be able to feedback the implications through that process.
Okay, I've got no more questions, so if you'd move away, we'll go into a debate on this, and Shane Henderson would like to make a comment.
Yeah, thank you. Just quickly, because this is a report around considering the input as opposed to kind of the rightness or wrongness of the savings themselves. Just want to quickly acknowledge the boards for all their hard work on this and really, really struggling timeframes, and they've pulled it together really well. I think that's a real credit to them. You know, as in line with my questioning, I am concerned about the process here a little bit, pointing out that we were given the dollar figures yesterday on which local boards were receiving how much cuts and what, which doesn't really give us much time to assess the equity on an area by area basis or what it means for the boards within our ward, which have very different ways they structure their finances. But I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But I'm not entirely clear on whether the local boards themselves had that figure, and I wonder whether that impacts their feedback somewhat, and that is a concern to me. But I'll probably talk about this topic a little bit more later. I just wanted to raise that as a process problem. Thank you, Mayor.
Fair enough. I mean, the time frames are tight on everything, but they're like this every year. We have an election that emerges in mid-October, and we have to have a budget before mid-December, and so and there's a lot to do. So I imagine it's most years is a bit like that. It would be much better if the election perhaps finished some months earlier, but I don't think anyone in the room's got any say on that one. But I do accept what you say. It is tough, it is tight, and I think we would all do with more time. We'd also do with less pressure, I think, financially, but we've got that as well. Councillor Hills.
Kia ora, Mayor. It was a lead on from what you've just said, Chair, and Councillor Henderson. My comment is kind of will be the theme of the day, I think, is that there's going to be a lot of trust we put into today's processes to ensure we have enough information for our communities to feed back, for our local boards to understand it, and for everyone to know exactly what could be lost or what could be gained by moving other levers. So I do have concerns, and I'm sure the staff are all listening on how to prepare the documents, is that we have been told a number of different things, 5% on the overall, 50% of LDI, the access to ABS, but also the fact that ABS is included in some of the regional reductions already, such as turf mowing, building costs. We've also got figures around fees going up for leasing and other fees for uses around CPI and costs on top of that, which are then also being used as a way for local boards to raise revenue to fill their gap. So I think we just need to ensure that it's very clear and methodical in February, March for our communities to understand exactly where the weights go up and down, because if we are double counting or if we give people a false expectation that they might be able to increase revenue when we've already done that on the other side of the ledger, that is key. So I know it is fast and it is a bit of a ridiculous process that you have to form a budget only weeks after you arrive, but we do need that information for February, March to make a good decision. Thank you.
No, it's a very good contribution. You sum it up as pressure everywhere, and we are looking everywhere, and that's why we have consultation, because it makes things clearer to everybody. But we have to examine every option given the situation that I've found myself in to prepare this budget. And do I have further comments? Otherwise, we can move on to proposing that we consider input from local boards, which is exactly what we've always intended to do when making decisions. And
Move this item, Chair.
Hey? All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. And the next item is not very important. Yes, it is. That was a joke, actually, just in case somebody got offended. I have to explain that here these days. And a rere na mana mina hui hinga tangata, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Just 2 months ago, thanks to 180,000 voters, I was thrust into the mayoralty of this great city. And since then, In that short period of time, I've met with all councillors on a number of occasions. I've formed and populated council committees with chairs, deputies and members. I've met with the chairs and CEOs of council-controlled organisations on a number of times. And I've tackled the problem of a sizable budget hole which I inherited from my predecessor. This deficit has rapidly increased from the $270 million announced on my day one to $295 million due to inflation and high interest rates. We've tirelessly worked and workshopped to develop a balanced budget at a time when ratepayers face unprecedented financial pressure themselves. I'd like to thank my councillors, all kept an open mind. I'd like to thank Jim Stabbick and Peter Gudsell and all the council team and their respective teams for their efforts in getting to the end of this. I'd like to thank my Chief of Staff, Max Hardy, and the fledgling team in my office. I'd like to thank the chairs and the CEOs of our council-controlled organisations for the time and effort they've put into this. And I'd like to thank the chairs and members of our local boards. And I realise everybody is finding this difficult. I wish I was handing out an extra $295 million. Together we face the challenge to deliver today's budget, at least for consultation. And the budget has been approved by Audit Committee and is ready for consultation. The $295 million budget deficit is actually only $295 million because I actually promised no new spending during my campaign. I also promised to finish existing projects before starting new ones, and to that end I am working to finish and minimise the cost blowout of City Rail Link. At this stage not impacting this year's budget, but it will do. I promise to stop wasting money, which is much of the focus of today's budget. I promise to take back control of council organisations, which is steadily underway, and to bring the harbour back to the people, and we're taking the first steps to do that today. I also promise to speed up traffic, and if you read the AT letters, we're putting them under pressure to do some of that as well. And I might remind you that had the alternative mayoral candidate, endorsed by both government parties and members of the press here today, had that succeeded, we would need to be finding another $250 million to fund free bus services. And that would have required drastic and irreversible service cuts, which I've avoided, or dealing with broken election promises, which I had no intention of doing. I just ask that everyone maintain some sense of perspective on the challenges facing us. So this is my proposal for the balanced budget. And if we don't take bold actions, we'll be announcing the dire prospect of rate rises well over 13%, and perhaps more if inflation and interest rates go higher, which central government seem to be keen to do. That's 13% rate rises just to stand still. Auckland ratepayers I'm pretty sure they don't wish to accept that during a cost of living crisis. So we should use every lever and balance them as best we can. I'm also pleased that this budget leaves a margin in case things get worse. We have been told by central bankers to expect another 75-point rise at the end of February in the OCR. In case some things don't get completed as quickly as we hope, or we receive another compelling feedback from the community on one detail or another. Officers tell us there's still a lot of risk. We shouldn't rule out anything that can help plug the gap, at least at this stage. And I'm looking forward to other savings council staff, CCOs, Expenditure Control and Procurement Committee and Auckland ratepayers identify over the weeks and months ahead. We've heard Councillor Walker making sure that we hear from what good ideas might be out there. To get to this point so soon after the elections has been hard work and intense work. team have worked over the weekends and Sundays to do this, but I'm confident that we have the balance of levers right for us to move to that next point of asking Aucklanders for their views on the package. Our Audit and Risk Committee advised us that this is an appropriate approach to manage the risk associated with the annual budget. And you've all read the budget proposal. I think we should now discuss with Auckland. I'll outline the main points as I see them. I'm proposing to use every lever in a balanced way to balance our budget in a sustainable, credible, financially prudent and fair way. The first lever is to reduce our operating costs. Like a lot of Aucklanders, the council will need to tighten its belt this year to make up the budget hole. We must change how and what we are spending on in the council group. We need to simplify what we do, cut spending and get more from each ratepayer's dollar that we do collect and spend. By necessity, this budget proposal includes savings which can be found quickly. There are also some things that can't be done without making changes to the long-term plan, but we must start thinking about those too now. I've proposed an overall savings target of 130 million for the group. It's based on credible plans that were presented to us and on what is achievable, plus some stretch targets from the Expenditure Control Committee, led by Councillor Williamson. There will be some hard decisions that we need to be made about the things that we council should do, those that we should do less of, and those that it should do more with the same money. We set the Chief Executive a savings target of $60 million for the council parent. And meeting that target, staff have proposed various savings which we should consult on. I recognise that some of these savings are pretty tough